Hey guys, welcome. Today in Social Studies, we're in Revolutionary War Part 2. We're going to be zooming in specifically and looking at the Declaration of Independence this week. Last week we talked about the battles are happening. Gunshots have been fired, cannons have been fired. Peace with Great Britain and the colonists is no longer an option. So what happens is they're meeting. The delegates from the 13 colonies get together and they say, hey, there is no peace. We are a separate country, and we need to let England know that we are declaring separation from England. And we are now going to be the United States of America. So this week we're talking about the first birth, the baby steps of our country. If you would like to look along with me, go ahead and get out your social studies workbook and open it up to page 38. So in your social studies workbook, go ahead and open it up to page 38, and we're going to look at the Declaration of Independence today. The Declaration, when you declare something, you tell people about it. Independence means that you don't depend on someone else. When you are an adult, you will be independent from your parents. You'll make your own decisions. So the Declaration of Independence is telling the world, telling England that we are independent, we are free from you. And it has some parts to it. On page 38, you'll see this here. And you can see some of our founding fathers writing the Declaration of Independence and working on it. Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and John Adams were the three big writers on the Declaration of Independence. The first part, preamble, it's just a fancy word for introduction. It just explains, hey, we are going to be separating. It's necessary for the American people, the colonists, to separate from England. Part 2 says big ideas. The Declaration of Independence includes a number of key philosophies or big ideas. I like to think about these as goals that we have for our new country and goals that we still need to have for our country today. These ideas are explained in the second section of the Declaration of Independence. And the first one you see there is all people have certain unalienable rights. Well, what that means, just as human beings, we have certain rights that are natural to living a healthy life. Unalienable is kind of a fancy word for saying they can't be taken away from you as a human. Just as a human, these are what you should naturally have. And the second bullet point there says, people's natural rights cannot be taken away. People establish government to protect these rights. So they are telling in this declaration that government should be used to protect these basic natural human rights. And governments also get their power from the people in the country. The government should be working for the people for them to have their rights. When a government violates citizens' rights, that means when they take away their rights, don't treat them like human beings, then people have the right and the duty to change the government, meaning that us as American citizens, this is why we vote, this is why we protest, this is why we make our voices heard when we feel like the government is not upholding humans' natural rights. And that comes from our Declaration of Independence. So that's the first two parts, introduction, and then these big ideas that humans have rights and the government should work to uphold those rights. If you look at the next page with me, page 37, part 3 is where we complained. These are our complaints or grievances against Great Britain. Okay, It says the Declaration of Independence includes a list of grievances or complaints against King George III. So we had just said in part 2, these are the things the government should be doing. And part 3, we're kind of wagging our finger at him and saying, you didn't do these things. One of the big ones is the colonists were denied their right to self-government, meaning that they had no say in their government. They had no say in how laws were affecting their lives. The colonists were forced to pay unfair taxes. The colonists didn't feel like all those taxes we talked about, the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, the Tea Act, they didn't feel like those were fair. And the king kept a standing army in the colonies, even during times of peace. So he had soldiers marching up and down their streets. He had battleships parked in their harbors. Remember the Quartering Act? He had soldiers living in their homes. And they're saying, this violates our rights. This goes against what we talked about in part 2. Naughty, naughty king. All right. And then number 4, with an exclamation point there, it says the Declaration. The Declaration of Independence officially declared the colonies free and independent from British rule, making it a new country. And that happened on July 4th, 1776. And I hope that you will listen to some of the songs below on our Padlet. There's a song called Fireworks, and it says, in 1776, the Declaration of Independence. And it's on July 4th. And every year we celebrate July 4th here in America. It's an American holiday because that's when we became a country. That's our birthday. All right, and section 5 was the signatures from all of the delegates that were there. And it includes 56 signatures. If you can see that picture there, you can find in the middle at the top the biggest signature. And that was Mr. John Hancock. He was quite a character, and we're going to learn more about him on Thursday. But he wrote it, and when he wrote it, he said, I'm signing it big enough for King George to see without his spectacles. Meaning King George isn't going to have to wear his glasses. I'm signing it big enough for him to see. I want him to know that I support this declaration. And Ben Franklin said, well, we'll either all hang together or we will surely hang apart. Meaning that each of the delegates signing that piece of paper knew that in the eyes of the king and in the eyes of Great Britain or England, that this was an act of treason. This was going against the king and the government. And treason was punishable by death. So all of the men that wrote their signatures on this and sent it across the water to England, they knew by signing this that they were committing treason and that their lives were on the line for these words from the colonies. If the Revolutionary War had gone differently, if the colonists had not won the Revolutionary War, which we'll get to later, we got lots of battles between now and then, but if the colonists had not won the Revolutionary War, then all of these gentlemen that signed this document would probably have been hung for treason and wouldn't have become our first presidents, our first congressmen, because signatures on here, we have Thomas Jefferson, which is our 3rd president, John Adams, which is our 2nd president. And there's also a copy of this in our hallway, so you can stop by and see this as well. The blue box there just talks a little bit about John Hancock. When you look at the signatures on the Declaration of Independence, you will see John Hancock's signature as the largest one. John Hancock was a wealthy businessman who became an important leader in the Revolutionary movement. In 1775, he became president of the Second Continental Congress. Hancock was the first representative to sign the Declaration of Independence. His signature became so memorable that even today, putting your John Hancock on documents means to sign your name on it. So when you have your parents sign your agenda, you can ask them, say, hey, give me your John Hancock. And that means give me your signature. That expression is still used by some folks today. Alrighty, and on the next page, page 38, if you'll flip with me, what this brought forth is that we have rights. It is, you know, many years after 1776, but this Declaration of Independence set up our country and some of our big ideas. The Declaration of Independence lists natural rights that belong to every human being. They are the rights to life, liberty, which is another word for freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. And there is a clipping there, words that are from the Declaration. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The way we would say it today is, it is very evident that it is true that everyone is created equal, and they have certain rights as human beings that cannot be taken away from them. They have the right to be allowed to live, to have a life. They have the right to live that life freely, and they should be able to pursue their own happiness. Now, some people nowadays will say, well, then why do we have laws at all if I can just have all of this freedom? Because we have to understand that if this guarantees it to everyone, that the government also has to protect everyone. Even though Miss Patterson loves to go really fast in her car, she likes fast cars, you wouldn't expect me to do 85, 90 going down Veterans Parkway, especially when school is in session, because then I would be violating your right to life and happiness, because I would be putting you in danger. So our government still has laws and still has rules. We don't have the right just to go 90 down the road. I don't have the right to go to Kroger and run up and down the aisle screaming cuss words, because this is for everyone to have freedoms and a safe life so that you can pursue your happiness. So right to life, everyone has his or her own unique life. Every person has the right to live. Right to liberty, every person has the right to be free. And right to the pursuit of happiness, every person has the right to seek happiness in life. Human beings naturally try to be happy. When people are controlled by someone else, that natural right is in danger. Okay, that's at the top of 38. Sounds good. Declare our independence. Everyone's equal. Let's have some freedoms and happiness. Womp womp. One of the big takeaways that you need to get from today and this week is that these were big ideas, but it takes time for those big ideas to go into place. Our founding fathers had goals for our country and what they wanted our government to look like. But it is up to us, American citizens, each and every day to make choices to help those goals come to life, to be truthful, to really have people created equal. And so you'll see at the bottom of 38 that in 1776, not everyone had the same rights. It says principles clash. When things clash, they go against each other with real life. The Declaration of Independence stands for principles of freedom and equal rights. However, when the Declaration was written in 1776, those principles did not ring true for all groups of people living in the United States. At that time, women, African Americans and American Indians did not have the same rights as white males. Slaves were not free. Women, African Americans, and American Indians could not vote. American Indians were denied rights when they were pushed off their land. That happens even later in our history. The good news is that America eventually held true to these core principles. It took many years to accomplish, but today American citizens share equal rights guaranteed by law. Examples of progress in the United States include in 1865, with the 13th Amendment, we have the abolishment of slavery. That means slavery was ended. In 1920, with the 19th Amendment, women got the right to vote. In 1924, Indian Citizenship Act granted citizenship to American Indians. So before these dates, we still had slavery, women were not treated as equals and allowed to vote, and Native Americans were not even considered citizens protected by government law. And there have been several more laws and protests and things happening within our country to try and continue to strive towards those big ideas that were started back in 1776. What I want you to do now is to look at page 39. And I want you to use the pages that we've looked at, 36 through 38, to answer these questions on page 39. I want you to pause the video. I want you to try these out on your own so that you can check them with me. Okay, so use the pages we just read and answer these questions, and then unpause the video and I'll be giving the answers. So pause the video. Okay, I hope you paused the video because I'm going to be giving out free answers. I want you to check yours against mine. No, I don't want you to just copy it while I'm doing it. I want you to be thinking away from me for a minute. I want you to get some of this in your brain and then come back and check with me. All righty. What are the natural rights listed in the Declaration of Independence? And that's on page 38. They are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Check yourself if you need to erase or pause while you get the correct answers filled in, because we're going to cut this page out and put it in our notes. So have the right answers. The preamble is the introduction to the Declaration of Independence. It explains that separation has become necessary for the American people. Next is a section that explains several big ideas about government and citizens' rights. The next part of the Declaration of Independence is a list of grievances or complaints against King George. I'm going to put complaints because I think we understand complaining better than grievances, but those words are synonyms. Following that section is a part where the colonies officially declare independence from British rule. The final section is a list of signature from delegates of all 13 colonies. A little bit for you. All righty, applying what we learned. How could the British Parliament have reduced the colonists' anger? I mean, how could they have made this better over the taxes? Well, they could have given the colonists representation in British Parliament. That was one of our big chants. No taxation without representation. Do you think issuing more taxes would have made them happy? No. So I'm not putting a check next to it. Could they have allowed colonists to vote on the new taxes? That would be a form of representation. Yeah. So I checked 1 and 3. Those would have been ways that they could have avoided all this. Okay. Now a little math at the bottom here, guys. In order to find the difference between these numbers, you had to take the date and subtract 1776 to find how many years passed. You have to do that for each one of these dates, okay? All right, the first one. So how many years after the Declaration did it take them before they actually got rid of slavery? I mean, they said in it, all men created equal. I don't think being sold as a slave and stolen from your home is equal treatment. It took 89 more years. 89 years is what I got for that one. In order for women to have a vote, I know it said all men, but it said it was human rights. It took 144 years after the Declaration before women got the right to vote. And then this last one, it took 148 years before Native Americans were considered citizens and protected under our government. So it did not happen overnight, and we are still striving to reach those goals of all men created equal, the government protecting its people and being derived, getting its power from its people. I'm going to now tear out page 39. And I am going to cut around the edges so that it will now fit in my brain book when I put in my notes. So I'm not taking 4 years and cutting around every single word. I'm just cutting around the edges of these boxes so that it will fit in my notebook. And we are ready to open up our journal and put some notes in. Thanks for staying with me, guys. Here we go. The last note that I had was about the Second Continental Congress. I'm going to flip and I'm going to put July 4th, 1776, Declaration of Independence. I am going to box it out and highlight it. And when next we meet, you'll watch a brain pop on Thomas Jefferson. So he's kind of a big player here. He gets credit as the main author of the Declaration. Thomas Jefferson, with help, from Ben Franklin, and John Adams. There are those two guys again. They keep coming back around. That's why they are founding fathers. Wrote this document. In modern terms, this was our breakup letter with King George. And the song Too Late to Apologize is on the Padlet. I hope you'll listen to it. It's one of my favorites. And then from Hamilton, there is a song that is an imagined response from King George. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Sounds like we're having some great results from our Zoom meetings today, and lots of positive feedback and lots of perspectives that maybe we
All right, sorry guys, there was an announcement from Ms. Goodwin there. All right, the document declared that the colonies were no longer a part of Britain, but a new country. So now in our story, our history, we have finally made it to that moment in time when we became America, the United States. All righty. Now on my notes, I added a little guy with the quill and feather, Mr. Thomas Jefferson. And it says, all men are created equal. We have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know me, I always like to have a little illustration with mine. Please pause because I am going to flip over because I cannot glue page 39 on this page. It won't fit. So if you need to pause to get the notes, do so. And then on the very next page, I am going to glue in page 39 so that it is a part of my notes. All right, guys, thanks for staying with me today. That was a lot of information, diving deep into the Declaration, and we will be diving more into the folks that were writing it on our next meeting. Until then, I wish you pursuit of happiness, and I will see you next time.